My name is Mutulu Shakur. They call me Doc. I'm a doctor of Oriental medicine. I'm an acupuncturist. I am the stepfather of Tupac. I've been with Tupac from the time from he was 1 year old on, and I'm his friend, his comrade, and I have been in relationship with the family Shakur, his mother, all of our political career, and she is the mother of my daughter, Century Shakur. Tupac's role with the new urban black male was a significant role in this period. And when I say this period, I mean the period between the individual's 80s and the opportunist 90s. Tupac represented the element of the community, the black male, who was most maligned by most people. He represented a view, an opinion, and the struggle that that element of our community went through at that period. I think he did his best to show the world what he went through. And he did it artistically, he did it as a man, and he struggled with his own growth. And out of it came a wonderful human being, a person who did his best to present his views and the views of many other people. Well, I believe that his voice connected with so many people because he was of the people. Tupac spent a lot of time in the community. His growth between his mother's and my own involvement in the Black Liberation Movement, his development, early childhood development. We worked in the South Bronx. His mother worked at Bronx Legal Services, which was providing legal services for tenants who were being displaced, who were getting very negative housing. I worked at Lincoln Detox, which was an anti-drug program, and it was in the days where the community programs were very important and very massively involved. You know, when people were involved, it was a people type thing. He learned a lot from the people, not from what was said by the people. He hung around with dope fiends, he hung around with gangsters, he hung around with oppressed people, he hung around with struggled people. People were struggling for things. He listened to the meetings, he was at all the meetings, you know, he was hanging, he was a part of that struggle as a young child as he developed. And so he knew the people. And so as his creativity evolved, he was able to articulate those feelings and had his own feeling by suffering, not having food sometimes, and not living in the best home sometimes, and trying to catch a jiffy cab in Harlem or in the Bronx. You know, he did everything we did. You know, the rain, the snow, the no heat, the heat. You know, so he experienced what people experience, and a lot of us cannot articulate what we experience. A lot of times we're glad that someone else articulates it. So when Pop presents a piece, whether it be poetry or a rap or a song or just speak, people identify that because we all don't have that ability to represent our pains and our joys and our frustrations. I think that Tupac was in the process of change and watching the change of a group of people at a certain period in our history. And that change was occurring in our community because the Black Liberation Movement had been destroyed by COINTELPRO. And that people who initially were involved in liberation became involved in opportunism, ego, and that it became a period where there was a lull in the struggle for human rights, a lull in the struggle for community control, a lull in the struggle for our integrity and our dignity. So Pop was a part of that transition and spoke to those issues and spoke to it in a way that people need to be organized. So when you deal with change and you try to organize around change, it makes you a revolutionary. And so whether or not you want to call him a Black revolutionary or give a label to it, that's another discussion. But was he a revolutionary? No question about it. Anytime you have a president and a vice president and a czar on drugs and a czar on education using your name and blaming you for everything that happens in the nation, then obviously you are in the turmoil of change. You represent that turmoil of change. And so not only was he a part of those change and being a revolutionary, he was targeted by the state as an image of that revolution and was attacked for it. Now, the other thing is he was changing himself. As you grow, as you become a human being, a man-child in this society, you go through your own development, your own personal development change. And to separate one from the other is kind of difficult. And wearing two hats in the public seems contradictory, but in fact it's a natural cause. One can see a political reality and a social reality, and one can feel internal turmoil and development at the same time. So it's really not contradictory. It's in fact reality. Mainstream America condemns most people that are not in lockstep with their agenda. Tupac in particular was an image that they wanted to remake. They wanted to, if you remember, the period where quote rap, but the hip hop culture had already emerged when Pac came on the scene. They had a culture of resistance, a culture of articulating what was going on in the community. The culture of hip hop and rap came from the community itself. And so there was an effort on the part of the music industry, the propaganda machinery, and the image makers to make Pac and others either into a gangster rap or into a pretty boy. And Pac wasn't having it. And so he bucked that. But at the same time, he liked the flavor. It was something he did well. This is all my opinion. He was a very, very good writer, lyricist. He had a very powerful command of articulating emotions and showing you the obvious in a way that you can consume. Tupac has always been on top of what's happening. I mean, we spent many nights and days as a little kid, as a little shorty. That's what that little picture I showed you. He would sit in meetings and he could assume, you don't like him, do you, Tulu? He would say that, I don't like him, I mean, obviously he was listening and came to a decision. He was not just at a meeting. I don't know if you know about the early movement days, the early period. Whether you were in the civil rights movement, black liberation movement, church movement, whatever, meetings dominated your life. Meetings. And Pac would be in all the meetings, and he would listen and fall asleep and wake up. And you want to go? No, I want to stay. Years ago, we used to do concerts for political prisoners in Brooklyn and Manhattan and Queens, around the country. Pac would always be on the stage talking to any and everybody liked to talk to Tupac because his eyes always indicated that he wanted to hear what you had to say. And his tentativeness as a young child was extremely powerful. I mean, he would just sit there and he just loved to talk to him. So he, like I said, he was other people. I think the movement, the failure of the movement to compensate for what I would underground, was something that he felt bad about. I think that it was a good period in his life to be active, to be a family, to be an extended family. Even with the tension and the oppression and the smell of gunfire. I mean, the police and the FBI and the intelligence department of this country had a full court press on many of the people that Tupac learned from. mostly all of his uncles and all of the people that took care of when me or Fanny couldn't take care of have been in jail or been killed or been harassed, been, just in that thing. So he's lived that. That's not lyrics without experience. Now, these kids are his friends at a very important stage. And this stage was in the depth of counterintelligence against the Black Liberation Movement.
Right.
And
This is him.
this is Tupac there.
I can recognize
This brother's father was killed in 1974. This brother is a brother's son by the name of Twyman Myers. And Twyman Myers was a Black Liberation Army soldier who was on the 10 most wanted list for 2 or 3 years until they killed him in the Bronx. This here is Malika Majid and Abdul Majid's son, who she was underground during the early 70s, and his father is in jail now for having been attacked and in a shootout with police in Queens, where one was killed. These are the people he grew up with. These are the children being children. But all of them have seen their fathers or mothers arrested. And all of them have had to bury someone that they knew, where when I couldn't pick him up, his father would pick Tupac up. You follow me, come out. These are all the kids that he grew up in. This is the innocence, but they experienced the complete dynamic of that period. This is Pac. This is all of Pac. This is Pac. This is that feeling, that comfort. This is the goofing off. This is being with his comrades, loving. So his fraternity for friends and his brotherhood was an important part of who he was. And, disappointments in that period obviously, I went underground in 1980. And so, we were not, me and Afeni weren't together, but me and Afeni was together because the movement and relationship were two different things. We were in a relationship, but we were involved in the same movement. So we were always, and have always been, friends. So before we had a relationship, maybe we shouldn't have had a relationship, but that's history to determine that. But we have always been comrades. And so they have always been my children. So it has never been an issue. When people say, who was his father? I don't never get into that discussion about whether or not Billy Garland was his father. Now, obviously, he biologically was his father. I'm a person who's never had a biological father. But my father was Abu Shakur, Saladin Shakur, and he has represented to me what a stepfather should be. And he's never married my mother or know my mother, for real. He said, so his son is my brother who was killed. Zayd was killed by the New Jersey police. Lumumba was killed in 1986, just before I was captured, a week before I was captured. And these are the people who Tupac had as uncles. In 1981, when the repression was intensified, and him and the family, etc., had to go and run from the FBI, and when the FBI would go into their schools and intimidate them and try to find out where I was at, where his aunt was at, where Sada was at. Most children don't know that. I think in the last part of the 90s with this new drug war and this new drug culture, more and more of the third world community understand what fascism and repression is. But we were, and they were, experiencing that as children years ago. And so imagine a 6'4", big old gawky, square head, somebody coming into your school and stopping you before you get on the bus, and and he has to take care of his sister, and where's your father? Do you know where Sada is? Where do you live at? And being responsible for securing your sister and keeping your mouth shut because he had learned that from years and years. And I'm not saying it's the best way for a child to grow up. And I'm not saying that we were the best of parents. Our intent was to be parents and revolutionaries. That was our intent. The consequences of those efforts, we'll still have to analyze and understand. When you know, who's not at odds with himself? Obviously, Tupac was at odds with himself. He loved to party because we always party. You know, we love to love. We love the fun. We love to have, make love. We love to, hang out on Oblivion. That's what we like to do. And we used to do it. Yeah, we used to sleep in the park. We used to kick back and listen to music, Stevie Wonder. We used to love to be family. We used to love to hang out, We used to love Lincoln Hospital and the Bronx Legal Services was full of people struggling to make a quality of their life out of the slums that looked like alcoholic, Germany in 42, you see. That's what the South Bronx looked like in the 70s when they were burning the buildings down. But we would go in there, we'd have a good time, we'd have a good meal. Woody Chris Avenue looked like a bombed out shelter. People lived there because they controlled it and they controlled the rent and they helped work to make the building a place for people who couldn't afford the rent, And we lived there and we hung out there. We strung a wire from one end of the building to the next. These are the things we did. And when people who were addicted to drugs and victims of methadone would fall out and faint and have convulsions, Pop was there. Pop was there in Lincoln Hospital when the transvestites first started getting hormone shots. And they used to hang out with Pop, and Pop would sit up on their lap and talk to them. We lived. We didn't deny anything. We went to church. They went to church, with the grandmamas, and they hung out in this clubs with us, and, you lived. So, not to live and enjoy yourself and live and have to watch yourself all the time at odds with yourself, you had to be at odds. You had to be at odds. And it makes you contradiction. Because in one element, if you open yourself up, you get hurt. And then you have to create this image of belligerence and antagonism to defend yourself from opening yourself up. So that's the dynamics, obviously, yes. Well, obviously to me, Pop foresaw his life. And I think that he seen it long ago. He just started racing. People disappointed. And then he started racing. We would have conversations about suicide. And those conversations was frustration. But they had a legitimacy to it in his own mind because he had a volume of things that he wanted to get done. And he was so disappointed at people's lack of the spirit and love for things that are obviously you should love and should want to do. And I'm sure that the Alarm Park records and the Lewisburg telephone records will indicate that we fought like hell about different things. And, we screamed and hollered. I was, someone he knew we was going to challenge and get the party started. So I think, though, he became convinced that he had so much to offer, and that's what we told him. And that the frustration was nothing compared to what we had been going through. And that it was just his turn. And that it was his turn to carry it on. He wanted to make his own niche. He could not be who his mother was or who his uncles and aunts and who, was. He had to even identify what the struggle was. I used to kid him and say, "Are you really a movie star?" And he used to flip out. He used to really go off, because, that was just a way of kidding, But and at the same time was to keep him focused, that, you're more than a movie star. And he knew that. And that's what aggravated him about so much things he had to do in order to do, what he really wanted to do, obviously. He did the acting because he's good at it, but it would help the other things that he wanted to do for his family, for his struggle, and to represent that pain. A lot of things he had to do killed his spirit. A lot of disappointment from us killed his spirit. And a lot of mistakes he made, people made him pay too much for at a development age. Certain people are geniuses, are forgiven for their idiosyncrasies. They're forgiven because it's a pocket. The genius is matured and they're forgiven because the end product was so great. But Tupac was never forgiven. He was never forgiven. And realized he passed form at 26. And in these years, from 18, 19, 20, 21, that's the development of stage. It's 3 times 7, 21 before you become a man, based upon the numbers. And he was in the throngs of that, trying to develop who he was. And so even from that perspective, in relationship to all young black men, the identity issue, who's your father, who's your male image, what role do you have? He used to tell me, I don't want any children to come up in this world. And he said, Pop, have children, Pop. Have a child. And he would buck. These are the type of discussions we would fight over. Like, what is thug life? What do you mean by thug life? What are you talking about? I'm a thug. Well, you the thug is going to beat up an old lady and take a pocket? Is that what you're talking about? No, that's not what I'm talking about. What it is, I know that's not what you're talking about, but you have to define it, Bob. You have to define it. And, and we did. And so when I gave him the history of thuggery, he began to understand the historical development of where it came from, out of India, the assassins of India. Then he began to say, I'm not really necessarily saying that, but I understand the point. In the transition from that to the British calling thuggery anything that happened on the planet that they didn't like, until it came into America, and then every male child, a black man child, was a thug. And so we had to rechange that. And I think, quiet as it's kept, he's done a lot to change what thug means. His genius is there. His genius is manifest. And even though the society has been unforgiving, and it's still a question, but I get letters every day from young children who could not be more than 10 when he passed form, who was 16 and 17, and I write them all back because they love Pac, and they can't love Pac for them seeing him. They have to love him because of his lyrics, his poems, you see. And so the hardcore, they probably don't get to see the hardcore. They just see what, in the end, that's why you put so much volume out, that you hope that they would see what was, I think that just like they think Lenin is still here and Elvis is still here, it's very interesting to have an anti-hero still here. And it's very interesting to have a black New African still here. And I think that the legacy that Pac left with his writings, with his spirit, with his poetry, his acting, his intent was to cast a spirit upon the people long after he was gone. And I think he's done that better than most. When they ask me, is he still here? I, for one, believe that there are levels of planes of existence. I don't think the physical death is the end necessarily. I believe there's a lot to be said and to be studied about the transition of the human spirit. I do think that when he passed from, I was locked up in ADX, and then I was transferred here. And I've been in maximum security, meaning locked down. And as I said before, I buried a lot of my comrades, a lot of people, and our family and our extended family. We love our family. We love our friends because it's not a passive relationship. And so it's been painful burying a lot of our comrades. And Pac's passing, it was one of the most painful experiences I've ever been through. And especially being experienced and going through this, I think that for some reason, I held on a long time when the pain was very intense. And one of the things that I realized, and I've understood this years ago, but sometimes as an individual, it doesn't stick with you. And then you have to be reminded that we must let him go so that he can do the things in the other stages of life and to manifest in the end what his true essence is about. And it's been hard. It's been really hard. And because of my own mistakes, because of the pain he's put on others, no finality, no end. His mother's doing a tremendous job keeping his legacy strong and doing the thing. But each person has a responsibility to the people they love. And so I guess I don't feel that I have been able to do all the things that I needed to do for him. And but I know we have to let him go. So one of the things I'm trying to do this CD, a tribute to him and other political prisoners and prisoners of war while moving, flush it out, but in terms of why people think he's still alive, I think it's a good thing. It's a part of him continuing to move and touch people. I think that's part of the responsibility he's left for us to do what we can to deal with the underclass, the underdeveloped, the disenchanted, the discouraged. Never give up. I think he's left a larger responsibility for us to do. And, obviously, there are some very painful experiences in his life. Obviously, there's some very tactical errors that he's made. Obviously, there is a number of disappointments and choices. But taken as a whole, under the type of intensity, type of barrage of pressure, the beatings, the shootings, the arrests, the harassment, the intimidation, the jailing.
I can't even imagine. I mean,
taking it all in together. He did the best he could. I believe he truly did the best that he could. I was isolated from him when they sent me the ADX, and we stayed in communication, and we tried to continue to push for certain things. And I got it, I understand, I'm on it, boom, but he was moving too fast. And one of the things that our communication would do would have someone so that he could bounce off of, that he knew, needing nothing, wanted nothing, except to make sure that he was right and straight. And someone he could struggle with, argue. Being a Tayembe, being a Shakur, a Tayembe, a Majid, the family of resistance, Odinga. There's so many stories of the heroic people that's been around Tupac's life. So many historic, brave, admirable sacrifices made around people that he grew up. These were legends to us, to him. And they just stopped making them. They just stopped making them. And so the legends became Nicky Bonds, Fat Cat Nichols, John Gotti, Sammy the Bull, Versace, Tommy Hilfiger, Moet, Cristal, BMW, Lexus, Triple Beam. These are the legends. These are the thing, They just can't compare. They just can't compare to human beings doing objectively whatever they can for other human beings and committing their lives to it. Stories of liberation, stories of breaking and running for freedom, stories for going to free someone from prison. I mean, these are stories that heroes are made of in our history. This is what we're made of. And that might sound criminal to others, but in the pit of the Black liberation struggle, these are the people that Pac had as an example, who he knew. These aren't people he heard, these are people he knew. There can be no discussion about the value that Assata Shakur has on New African Black women in this country at a certain period. There can be no discussion of the value of Fannie Shakur in that period of history. There can be no discussion about Frankie Ray Adams, Malika Majid, or Sandra Pratt. These are aunties, women that who took care of them, fed them, took them to the movies, took them to daycare. These are not people you read about in history. This is a Nahanda. Nahanda Ibidu. I mean, these are people who are Fulani, people who've given up everything at a period in their life to do what they think is principally right for other people. And this is who Pac's. This is his family. Not always right, not always on time, not always being there, not always, but this is his family. And so his life represents a historical evolution in a different period, in a different time. Tupac used to do ear massages at the clinic. He used to do pressure points and the dope fiends' ears. He used to put the finger in the ear and hold the ear and breathe and just wait till I come and stick him with the needles. Pac used to like to do it. He was a people's person. Well, I think Tupac's music is music of the age. I was hoping that he, obviously, I love his music. I have the production and the like. You're talking about all the lyrics all the time, we rumbled over that. But I think that we used to struggle back in 91, 92. I'm old school and the so-called new school. See, the East Coast rappers a little like avant-garde-ish, where rhythm and content and offbeat is more applicable. The West Coast has rhythm, jingle at that time, you know. You had some people, Paris and some others, you know, bringing it on, you know. But Pac was, you know, I Get Around and the jingle and that go, and I really didn't like I Get Around. I said, what is that? You know, I Get Around. It sounded a little lollipop. But when my homies call, you know, that kind of stuff. But I think that we used to push for that Bobby Womack beat or that Maze beat with the East Coast rap and style and mixing them together, you know. And I think that's one of the reasons why his music is palatable to most people, because he integrates the rhythm, song, lyrical thing to make a nice mesh, you know. And I think people like the music it does it so good. Not only does it, I mean, it does motivate. I'm not saying it motivates nobody to kill anybody. That's ridiculous. But it motivates people to get up and want to do all of the music. And I've been in prison a long time, and a lot of the prisoners always tell me, well, I used to play this music when I was getting ready to do this, you know. I mean, they like the music, you know, it's the joy. In 1992, Pac came to Longport, and he met a lot of brothers who were rapping, and he was very impressed. And he made a commitment that, you know, when he got his thing together, he was going to give a lot of them some shots, you know, to come up. And so I said, well, I'll keep an eye on a certain. So we had made kind of a commitment to put out a CD, you know, with them from behind the wall, prisoners, you know, mainly. And he passed form before he was able to do it, but between the thug code that we put together and different issues, you know, we will make a commitment to try to do this. And so this CD is a dedication to him. It's various artists that are on it, and the songs are dedicated to him and political prisoners. And kind of, it's a concept album of keep pushing on, hold on. And so it's aimed at that audience that Pac would have dealt with. And it's not, you know, I think that people would think if they have Tupac album, they would want to have this album from his father to him, and, you know, and it's not polished like that. It's just some straight, you know, do your thing, rap, motivational stuff. You know, we're gonna do this under the Dead of Struggle production. It has nothing to do with Amaro Records. It has nothing to do with any other record company. It's just straight from the streets of no-name people, some named people, some people that I believe Pac would have gave a shot to, not for commercial purposes, but because they're trying. And it's been a 2 or 3 year project, and we're almost finished. We hope to have it out by Kwanzaa, and you'll probably be able to get it off of the internet, you know, like that. And we're gonna put this picture on, and we got some other pictures of him and Pac and Long Paw, and just so they can see, various sides of him, you know, and from more, how we respect his work on a political level for political prisoners. Wasn't for Pac, I don't think that people would know much about political prisoners in America, prisoners of war, for the Black liberation struggle. He's always kept that out front, and he's never wavered from that. And no record company has ever been able to manipulate that out of his lyrics. And Bailey, his manager at the time, Brother Watani, obviously is a part of the liberation movement, and has always been there for, to make sure the political continuity was, there. I mean, there's just a lot about Pac that still has not been taught. And it's not that, we're saying that people don't want to do, it's just very comprehensive, and it needs more, more flushing out. Death Row Records. Death Row Records was a vehicle for him to use at the time. And it was a vehicle, that I think he tactically felt that he needed to take. They had some good artists with some potential. I mean, obviously, commercially, he had a lot of commercial potential. I think Suge Knight did a lot on that commercial level potential. I believe that the intrigue was a different type of intrigue that he was involved with. You have Tupac already had enemies by the government. And so when you integrate two types of contradictions, you never know where your enemy is coming from. And you create much more confusion. And I think that Death Row obviously was a gangster rap music company. And I think that gangster rap and revolution together, unless there's a political principle agreement, creates a whole new scenario. And so therefore, counterintelligence, intrigue, gang unit intelligence, drug thing, and counterintelligence, political. I think obviously the government did not want Pac way before Death Row, did not want Pac to become a staple in America's culture. I think that they did not want Pac to be able to bring to him those who went to gangster and or culture, because Pac would come forward with political work and the cultural resistance, similar to what a Bob Marley or Fela or Mary McKeever, Yuma Sakila, Lucky Dube. I mean, you know what I mean? He would have gravitated that element that would have continually Lance Poets, the Gil Scott Heron, but at a much, much, much higher level, at a commercial level, at a political level, and with the support of his family, his name, his credibility would not be just lyricists, just singing. And so I think he had his own concerns, politically and militarily. And when he went with Death Row, it became two types of military concerns and two types of political concerns. But he made a tactical decision. And obviously, he was, working with those decisions. Obviously, his word meant a lot to him. So his commitment to Suge Knight was something that he was going to fulfill. And I think that he wanted to fulfill his commitment to his struggle, his history. And so I think those conflicts, and that's why we don't know who killed Tupac.
Right.
And that's a tactical concern. Well, like I said before, Fannie and I were friends, comrades, and in the movement, I hate to say it, we try to keep it close. Our relationships, camaraderie and emotionally and romantically, generally overlap at that period in history. One of the things we learned in the struggle, life, the struggle is life, is criticism, self-criticism. And so whenever we're confronted with our own who we are, we generally be more critical than we are objective, because we have to look at ourselves. I think that I was a man in Tupac's life who had a commitment. I was a man in Tupac's life who probably had a commitment to the struggle more than to the family. Now that is not to say that I did not have a full commitment to my family. I mean, because the Black liberation struggle was about the Black family. I think that preparing for their the inevitability of either being murdered, captured, or in exile, there should have been a much more concerted effort to satisfy the basic needs and keep the continuity. It wasn't for, Gene the same, Watani, and various people who looked out for my family. That aspect of my family, the continuity would have been broken. And, you know, obviously that was not a good thing. Not having a biological father and having a great mother who was blind all of my life, picking and choosing men had nothing to do with picking and choosing fathers. And I learned to understand that early and give her space to do that. And so I never imposed fatherhood on the children that I was responsible for, if they were not mine. And Tupac, I was very careful about saying, I am your father. You make that decision, we ride with that. Other than that, I'm Mutulu, let's ride. And I think that was how we did. I mean, you can see the visiting form and all that. He's my father. I mean, whenever he said it, that's what it was. And I had no problem with that. I had no problem with that because I lived through people saying that they're my father and they, some nothings, you know what I mean? But I think that he knew that I was there for him always and forever, except if I couldn't be there. And I think that he depended on me to carry out my responsibility. Now, my older son, Mopreme, who had not been so much in my life the first part of his life, had experienced the absence of that fraternity. Because me and Pop, there's no child, and I have a couple of children, I have 5 children, there's no child that I've spent that type of time with other than Pop. And so watching the two of them understand what my role is, Pac has always known that I'm the person, that in the end I'm the person, where Mopreme wasn't sure. And even till the day, I mean, we, love and the rest of it, but he's still not clear what Pops mean, what that image of responsibility means. And in various dynamic ways, I was father, friend, and comrade with Pop. And so I think that was a positive example of men, of being a man, and having a relationship with a man. I think that the media and the standards take too much glorification in their view of things. I think the people understand real life. And I think what attracts Tupac to so many people 6 years after his passing is because he has been real. And I think real is getting kicked down the hill and getting back up. Real is making a mistake, saying I'm sorry, but you're not gonna bury me in it, I'm moving on. Real is taking a position and standing on it. Pac has done that. Real is finding out what you are about and putting that out there and deal with it the way you want to. I mean, masses, media, take it or leave it, it's on you. If you clear where you're going and why you're going there, that's what it's about. Pac's lyrics, prophetic. You see, Pac's lyrics talks about things that are still consistent today. Pac's lyrics talk about pain in terms of the social conditions of AIDS, talk in terms of the conditions of romance, in terms of the police brutality, economic disparity, cultural genocide. I mean, Tupac talks about God. Tupac asks questions of God. Who doesn't? Who doesn't? he was writing, he was feeling. I gotta answer this question. Can you imagine him going through this day and he runs into a little sister or a little brother and they pose a question or make him think? He has to get, then he is direct, because I know that that person is going to need that answer, and I can put that answer out and people will hear it more than just the person that asked it, because I have the capability. I'm the messenger. I can do it. Not a saint, a messenger. Not a perfect person, a messenger. From my point of view, I think MTV, BET, all of them should give him his due. And I think that there's still so much to give him, because what they're giving him is his commercial due. And I'm here in Atlanta. This is the mecca of good music, but very seldom do you hear Tupac's message music on the top 40 radio stations. You hear his music. A man by the name of Malik Kalan plays his music every Wednesday night and Thursday night. You get an hour. They call it the Pac Ride. You're gonna hear it on the RFG 89.3. You're gonna hear a whole hour of all of his music. But I mean, you can go 2, 3, 4 weeks before you hear a pop song on the radio top 40. You see, and so it's not that people are getting a diet of it because of the commercialism or because he's in rotation like that. Now, I'm in Atlanta and I'm in prison, so I'm not sure what the rest of the world is doing, but in here, I mean, that's the fact. I think that the schools in Berkeley who are analyzing his lyrics, I think that as a teacher, I used to teach myself, you need to deal with the clientele that you're dealing with and try to move it from one stage to the next. I think it's appropriate for him as a poet, as a lyricist, as an artist to be. You did it for the Beatles to analyze the flower child issues of the '60s. You know, we've done it for various artists. I mean, the blues is consistently being analyzed, and I think, and what impact and how it evolved, jazz classes. But I think hip hop and the rap culture is a culture of movement and articulation of the expressions and concerns of people in relationship to their environment. It is one of the most clearest expressions of this period than essays and books than anything else. And it's more mass than essays and books. And so for him to have a significant role in the continuation and the advancement of that tool, I mean, just like that man KRS-One, I mean, he's a bad boy, you really got to, so it's a lot that still have been to be written. And he's still, but Pac is a lot more that you got to analyze about his role and what it is that he's doing. And I mean, what it is that he means to this culture of hip hop, funk, jazz, and rap. A lot more accolades is going to be given to the brother. And I think he's well deserved. I think his mistakes got to be put out there. I think that the whole question of red and blue, the whole question of east and west, I think the whole question of these what I call horizontal aggression between us has to be addressed, and we have to address it now because his and Biggie's experience has a lot of lessons for what's getting ready to happen now, and particularly what role, if any, did they play in the counterintelligence program? Were they manipulated for the purposes of creating an internal contradiction to keep the young from thinking about their struggle? I mean, those are questions that's got to be asked. Whether or not the hip hop culture is an enemy of the American culture. Whether or not the materialism that is expressed today in the hip hop culture is designed to divert a group of people who should be thinking about how they can deal with the underdevelopment of Africa, deal with reparations, deal with police brutality, and real power. Oh, it was given to me, Shakur was given to me, and Mutulu was given to me. Mutulu means someone who will help you get where you're going. And it's a Zulu name. And Shakur is the tribe I belong to. Saladin Abu Shakur is the name of our father, who was the father of Zayd Shakur, who was killed when Salah Shakur was captured, and Mutulu Shakur, who was the first husband of a famous Shakur, who was the what they call the person who was the head of the Black Panther Party in Harlem. In the Panther 21 case, was Mutulu Shakur at all is the name of that case. One of the most dynamic brothers that people still don't know about. Salah Shakur took the name. There's a lot of Shakurs from the Olabala tribe of the Black Liberation Army, from the Republic of New Africa, the New African People's Organization. The Shakur name represents a lot of sacrifices, and I'm a part of that legacy. And I think that we've done as much as we can to maintain the integrity with our personal errors, with our post-traumatic stress, with our errors. You have children that still don't understand you. You lose relationships. You don't have emotional relationships, and you have legacies unfinished. So there are. The music keeps you going, and the hope keeps you going. And post 9/11, who we are become different people. We are now labeled something that is demonized, as opposed to a freedom fighter. We become terrorists. And so, how does that impact on everything else? And so, life is life. If you take any statistics you want on state and federal level, especially the federal, 98% of the people they take to trial is convicted. So what do you need new rules for? What is this, secret trial? I watch a lot of these hip hop artists, and this is not to encourage anything. The weed is one thing, but I've seen so many people, young people, artists, and I don't want to mention their name because it might show up, but Jay-Z is looking better now. Cheeks is looking better now. Various young artists that they would keep, think about the JB or whatever that, Alizé, all of that. I think drinking is a terrible thing. I think it distorts the body, it kills the liver. It's a terrible thing. And I think because they didn't want to get into drugs, they just talked about alcohol, and it became just like they wore Versace, because they talked about it, and Moselle and Cristal. They still drinking it. Why? It's nasty. It's just a fad, and it's a terrible fad to get involved in. And I'm sure he was of that fad, I know, he liked the weed, ain't no getting around that. Weed has been around him for years, Was he an alcoholic? I wasn't out there, but I know that the culture of hip hop is to drink a lot. The culture of hip hop is to smoke that weed. And I'm sure he was deep in that culture. Moved to some of the most maximum security prisons in this country. And I have never had an incident, which means you get moved to high security because you have an incident. Now, a lot of the movement because of my political beliefs. In 93, this article, what's this, 94? This article came out, a better copy of it somewhere. It's called The Sins of the Father. Yeah, and they put this out. And when they put this article out, they moved me from Lewisburg to Marion, which was the maximum prison at that time. Now, The Sins of the Father, Pac had just had a shootout with the cops down here in Atlanta. they were trying to make the political connection then between the struggle and who we are. Generally, they talk about Afeni, but then they get into the charges against me and, you know, this whole scenario. And then the effort was to stop me from communicating. We were doing the thug code, the code of the thug. And we wanted to define thug code and deal with the issues of the horizontal aggression in the street. And so we were putting together one of the albums we were going to be dedicated to the thug code. And so we evolved the thug code, and there was a community organization. As a matter of fact, your magazine, Vibe, had an article about the thug code, the continuation of that effort in your Vibe. I think about 5 months ago they had a continuation of it. But right after that, we were on the phone talking about this. Me, Man, various people in the crew who were in the thug crew and the outlaws. And the hotel that he had this charge in, this so-called rape charge, I mean, if you read the code of the thug life, it talks about respect your women, respect yourself, boom, boom, boom. I mean, it's around here somewhere. And we were just talking about the different points in the thug code. And Pac said, well, I can deal with that, we can deal with that, we should fix this up, blah, blah, blah. And we were going through that night. And so there was a conference of people who were from the streets. I'm not talking about Joe Schmo people. I'm talking about people in the light who were coming together to see if they could agree with this thug code. And Pac came to this meeting to pull that agreement together. And the next day, they have him set up on this rape charge. So for everybody, they don't know none of this. No, most people don't know the chronological events of what went on. And so part of his case was that there were tapes on the telephone of what he was trying to do in the hotel. And the cops got the tapes. And Michael Warren was trying to use the tapes as evidence of something. So they said they didn't know where the tapes were. Because if you got the tapes, you would have heard me and him talking about just those things. So there would have been one contradiction to that type of behavior, you see. And so no one knows this because, you know, and no one understands the many things that Pac was doing. And so the thug code, the street code, and as you see, I think it's, oh boy, okay, 1, 2, 3. I don't know if I have the right copy here. But anyway, it is very specific about what you can and cannot do as a thug, you know what I mean? Don't sell to pregnant women, don't do this. And it's not a thing that says you can't do this, because we know we didn't have the power to prevent people from doing what they were going to do. All we ask them to do is to respect the community, respect pregnant women, respect sisters, and respect themselves. You know, no shooting in parties, no shooting in clubs. If you have a target, deal with your target. Don't deal with people with collateral damage. The same thing they're talking about in collateral damage. We know the conflict is going to exist. Mediate, boom, boom. These are the principles that was in the thug code. And this is what Pac and some of the OGs and young G gangsters in various parts of the country, the Bloods, the Crips, the people off of the streets of Queens and Brooklyn, they were all in Manhattan. They came together and sat down and was trying to create that, and Pac was a motivator for that. And that's why they had to charge him. And that's one of the reasons why they had to lock him up. And so when he went to prison, they did not want him to come back out and be moving in that direction.